Welcome to another episode of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast, the show that brings you weekly advice and news at the beginning of every weekend. Introducing first your hosts, Mack, Mark, and Landon. It's Pro Bowl week. We are back live on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or however you may be listening. We want to welcome you into the show. It is Saturday, January 26th, episode 40 of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Mack, and I'm joined by, for the time being, my one co-host, Mark. And later we'll have Landon on the show. He's just slinging some pie right now, so we gotta wait for him. But Marky, how's it been going, my man?
I don't know who you think you're expecting on this show. This is Charlie.
Oh, sorry, Charles. Charles, guest.
Yeah.
We got a guest co-host tonight.
This is Charlie. I've come into a bloke's house here and I've thrown on his microphone and... Get the hell out of my house.
How many drinks in are you right now?
Sorry about that, Mac. It's these vandals in my neighborhood.
Ah, vandals. Yes.
Yes, ever since I've moved to the south end of sleepy London town here.
AKA Thunder Bay.
There's no peace.
That's the price you got to pay, though.
No, I'm fired up. I'm just having a little bit of fun here. Come on now.
You excited for the Pro Bowl here?
Yeah. I mean, I'm more excited for football where every player is committed on every play. But yeah, it's a really fun weekend. It's always great to see the best players, best performers of the league go out, and they're clearly just there to have fun. It's a revered day in the NFL, but just not that important to football. It's just doing it for the game and less so for the competition. What are your thoughts on the Pro Bowl, Mac?
Is it bad that I'm more so excited for the dodgeball competition or the throwing contest or the catching, the mini games? Is it bad? Or is that just
not at all?
That just
no,
normal?
We know that these guys can play football, but it's great to see that they're capable of other things too. Like that dodgeball is really entertaining. Anyone can play dodgeball. It's great to see professional athletes just doing that sort of thing too.
Did you see Saquon busting out some jukes in the dodgeball game?
I did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I saw Andrew Luck hit Akeem Hicks trying to flex a little bit and taunting. That's if you taunt on Andrew Luck, it's a throwing game. He's gonna hit you. You do have a chance to catch it, I guess, but that thing's gonna be spicy. It's coming in with some heat. Yeah, no, it looks pretty fun. I mean, you see all kinds of videos from lots of different sources on, on all social media platforms, and clearly everyone there is just enjoying the first few weeks of their off season, and yeah, why wouldn't they? It's a beautiful place to have a game too.
No doubt. We want to let the people know before we get going, we are on Instagram. If you want to follow us on social, Saturday Morning Snap is our handle. We're also on Twitter, Landon_SMS, Mark Draft _SMS, and our main account is SMS_fantasy. Do want to note here, if you've been listening for a while, we appreciate your listenership, if that's even a word. If you've been listening for a while and you have not left us a review, please jump over to wherever you listen, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. Leave us a review. It really, really helps us out, get noticed, get the word out. And we really want to hear from you. Make your listening experience the best that it can be. If you're new to the podcast, maybe give us a couple episodes before you leave a review, but hit that subscribe button and make sure that we drop into your pocket every single Saturday. Just wanted to put that out there before we got into it.
Lovely.
So we got a silly little question to start, as we like to keep it fairly casual. Mark, would you rather be able to control fire or water given the choice?
Interesting. Both are necessary, but one is arguably more necessary. I would say water.
Oh.
Water for me. Just, well, as it stands, like there's certain climates, like in the far north where I currently reside, like fire is a very essential thing because it gets so cold. But it would take nothing more than moving somewhere else where it's warm year round to not really have to worry about fire as much. But with water, that is something that you just simply can't survive without.
Which one's more catastrophic? Like that's the perspective I'm looking at it from.
Well, it depends. There's a lot more water at any given time than there ever could possibly be fire. Yep. And if you were to look at water-related disasters like a tsunami, let's say, I think the most devastating tsunami is probably a lot worse than the most devastating fire of all time.
100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you control water, you control 70% of the Earth's surface. It's a no-brainer for me.
It's not a limiting question. Like, all water that is yours. But I feel like fire, you're creating it. Water, you're controlling it. So could you create more fire than there is? No, but water beats fire all day. So you got to take water.
Yeah.
I think
there's a certain few arguments for fire, but really it's like staying warm and like cooking food, I guess. I'm sure there's more uses for it, right?
Well, it's like, I don't know. If you were stranded and you needed water, like if you were, in a survival situation, you need water, you could just make any water sort of appear and it'd be yours. So you could essentially stay hydrated and live, but after a certain period of time, like I think it's like 14 or 21 days where you can survive on only water, like you would eventually die. But if you had fire, you could stay warm and you could cook, which would essentially keep you living. So, I mean, if you're looking at it from a like survival perspective, I would probably take the fire for warmth and for eating. But in any other, like, assuming that survival is not part of the criteria, I'm going to go with water because it's like the most powerful. You can do the most with it. I think I'm going water.
I agree with that. I think, however, humankind only really made it to where we are because it's a beautiful harmony between water and fire. So,
yes,
like, I'm going to go with water, but shout outs to fire still.
We will... Which is, okay, this is funny, going back, like if people who listened last episode when we talked about Pokemon, if you go back to the Pokemon days, I would take Charizard over Blastoise any given day.
Wow.
But that goes
in the
against...
card game or in the Game Boy game?
Well, both.
Really? You would take Blastoise? No, Blastoise would dominate Charizard in the video game. No. But we all know that Charizard's playing card was more powerful, could deal more damage in one turn.
Charizard was the OG, man. You had to take him. I'm interested to see what side Landon picks on this. He usually takes the different route, so I bet you he's going to go fire. And I'm not going to sway him one way or the other. He's going to go into this blind. So, you want to put bet down? I think he'll do fire.
Yeah?
Or you think he's going to have...
He might just come on here and prove you wrong. I hope he does.
You think he's got conventional wisdom to go with water? No.
Landon knows a lot about water. If anyone knows a lot about water. He drinks that stuff daily.
Yeah.
He showers at least once a month.
I was going to go week, but yeah, a month. All right, we got some running back questions here. And if you haven't listened to the pod from last week where we ranked way too early, the 2019 1 through 10 running back finishers. Go ahead and check that out. But we're going to talk about today what running back 2 and running back 3 from this year has the best chance of finishing in the top 12 in 2019. So just to sort of go over some of the guys we talked about last week, this is in a half point per reception format. That is the default on most major platforms. And we omitted week 17 from our point totals because we don't really encourage people to play in week 17. So weeks 1 through 16, half point PPR. We've got Gurley 1, McCaffrey 2, Barkley 3, Kamara 4, Zeke 5, Melvin Gordon 6, James Conner 7, James White 8, Kareem Hunt 9, David Johnson 10, and coming in at 11, Joe Mixon, number 12, Phillip Lindsay. So we're looking outside of guys, those 12 guys, as to maybe guys between ranks 13 and 24 and 25 and 36 that could potentially jump up into the top 12 for next year. So, Marky, you want to kick this one off, or you want me to go with my number one guy?
I may as well start us off. I had him down last week in the episode I had him in my top 10, much to your chagrin a little bit. I don't think either one of you guys agreed that this is a plausible thing, but I think that's going to be Chris Carson. Mm-hmm. He had a phenomenal season. I do like the Seahawks. They're kind of doing their own thing. They're a very unique team in their ability to move the ball around some games, passing, and then really became dynamic as a running team as well. But it was just sheer effort and a lot more reliability on that Chris Carson factor late in the season. Mm-hmm. Beautiful season this year with 1,151 yards on 247 attempts. Got himself 9 touchdowns. And, to me, that was a really great performance from him this year. And I just want to see more action from that next year. Mm-hmm.
I love the Chris Carson play for a potential candidate to move up. When we did the top 10 rankings, he wasn't a guy in the top 10 consideration, but I could see him as a fringe guy, like an 11 or 12. So I don't think you're too far off of Chris Carson. And his finish last year was... where is he here? 17. So to say that he could move up is definitely not out of the question. I hope personally that Rashad Penny gets a little bit more work for what they drafted him to be. But with how good Chris Carson looked this year, for it to be a foreseen, what's the word I'm looking for here? For it to be an assumed work role is sort of not the case. Rashad Penny, if he's going to steal anything away from Carson, he's going to have to earn it, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And he's going to have to stay in really good shape after the training camp, which I don't think he was able to do throughout this last year.
No, I'm really looking forward to see what Rashad Penny returns to camp. What does the scale say? Because I think that's going to be a huge indicator if he's serious or not about his role as an NFL back.
And you see, Pete Carroll he wants to run the ball. So I think Rashad Penny does have the potential to be a weapon too. And to finish as the number 1 rushing offense, they are someone that can make dynamic moves like that and put people in to mix it up.
They are so big, hugely committed to the run. I mean, you look at Russell Wilson's stats this year, fantasy-wise, in 2017, he was the number 1 quarterback for fantasy. This year, nowhere close. And when you break down the Seahawks play calling, 48% of their plays were passes. So that it's a huge shift towards the run game. They're overly committed on it. That's why I think Penny will eventually get used. But for right now, Chris Carson holds the keys to that backfield. And if they're going to commit to that run game, he should continue to make strides towards that top 12. So I don't mind the pick. I don't think you're too far off.
Right on. And who do you got? Who do you think is going to make that leap from RB2 to RB1? I'm staying close to home. Aaron Jones. He finished number 20 last year.
And just to preface, 158.5 fantasy points in this setting. Chris Carson 172. So we're in the same neighborhood here with guys. I just look at Aaron Jones. He started the year off weeks 1 and 2. He was out via suspension. Comes back, doesn't really get worked into the offense. Weeks 3 through 6, didn't get a whole lot of work. Week 4 against Buffalo, he had 11 carries. First time he got into double digits. Then they had the bye week. But from the bye week onward, weeks 8 through 14, Aaron Jones scored in every single game except for one. Had 7 touchdowns in the 8 weeks. Was a monster. And his carry counts went from 6, 7, 8 to 12, 14, 15, 11, 17, 11, 17. And he was just a monster. He was also getting work in the passing game too. 4, 5, 6, 5, 4 receptions, scoring in the passing game too. So I just think Green Bay so desperately needs that hard runner. I mean, you look at the success that they had when Eddie Lacy was one of the best in the league. I mean, I remember if it was 2014 or 2015, Eddie Lacy was number 1 or number 2 in fantasy drafts. He was just so valuable because he played on a really high-powered offense with one of the best quarterbacks in football. And I think maybe the same narrative exists for Aaron Jones if he can just get the work right out of the gate. You have a new offensive coordinator come in with a new head coach come in, Matt LaFleur, who's a great offensive mind, kind of the fallen apple from the McVay tree. I just think if Aaron Jones can get established early and can start doing work, it's going to be a great season for him. He could go from 20 to 12 like that. But if I see Jamal Williams come out the first couple sets of 2019, I'm going to be, pretty pissed off.
Well, that's the thing is you look back, like LaFleur is going to look back on their offensive scheme from last year and see that success that Jones had and going to want to build on it, right? Because he is going to change a lot of things as well. And he's not going to be the same coach as McCarthy was. But anyone can look at Aaron Jones's numbers and see that this guy should get the ball. And they're going to be trying something different than last year. And they're a passing offense. They've got to be more run-based if they have this reliable of a runner behind Aaron Rodgers.
I just think when you look at Green Bay, you're right. They are a pass-heavy team. You saw what they have in their rookies this year. I mean, Jake Kumaro was a huge boost, a guy that came off the practice squad that just showed out in preseason, had a bad injury, came back, looked great in the end of the season, caught a big touchdown on a big play, just like he did in the preseason this year. But if they don't have that run game to set up play action falls flat. And when Green Bay was succeeding a couple of years ago, contending for Super Bowls, they lost that one game to Seattle. They had a really solid run game with Eddie Lacy and a couple other pieces. And they've sort of lost sight of that. That's been their Achilles heel for the last couple seasons. And but Aaron Jones has just sort of emerged, and it's one of those trends you hope continues going forward, because you want to see this team do well. At least I do, being a Packers fan. But it's one of like the most historic teams in the league. You desperately want to see them do well and be there. But if they don't get a run game going, it's going to be tough, man.
Of course.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah, I do like to see the Packers succeed, despite them not being a team I inherently root for. But you can't not like them. You're right. Yeah. It's there's a certain element of just being a fan of the NFL. You kind of just like a team like the Packers.
You are lulled into it. If we're going to scrape the bottom of the barrel here, going to the running back 3, that's ranks 25 to 36. What guy from that range can jump up into the top 12 potentially?
Well, we're calling it scraping the bottom of the barrel, but I have got someone that is he has been enormous in the offseason, unstoppable, and getting so many feeds. And that's Sony Michel.
You found a loophole.
Well, I mean, he did have... his regular season was nothing to shake your head at, really. Like he had 930 yards, 6 touchdowns. It was a great rookie season for him, and he's on a team where there's going to be a lot of competition at the running back spot. But I think if I were just to roll the dice and say there's going to be a big change on the Patriots offense, like, who knows, maybe a retired quarterback or maybe a retired head coach after this season, pending on what happens in next week's Super Bowl. I think Sony Michel is in for a very bright future here in New England, and I think he is twice the player of someone like Rex Burkhead. And even if he's sharing responsibilities with James White back there, like, they have proven that they want Sony Michel to take the ball in big situations, and they trust him, and I would trust him too.
No, I like that play. A lot of people talk about James White and his 8th place finish this year as a fantasy running back. You just look at how involved he was in the passing game, and just all of the work that he got. But really, he's there because he plays for the New England Patriots, and there was no Rex Burkhead, no Sony Michel for a majority of the weeks. So he really just got to work,
Well, and James White was so relevant in the first half of the season, right? He was unbelievable
and a
in the first half of the season. But by then, or at that point, like, the other names in that backfield weren't as relevant as they are now.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at last week's game, who scores the game-winning touchdown in overtime for the Pats? Rex Burkhead.
Yeah.
Like,
that's right.
That's just what the Patriots do. That's what Belichick does. He uses whatever back he sees fit for the role. He just had no choice but to just feed James White, and you saw that. But Sony Michel was the guy they leaned off in the playoffs, and we'll see, you're right, what happens next week in the Super Bowl. I would assume that it'll be a really big split between Sony Michel on the ground and James White through the air. That's the way that I see it.
I just think he's a bit more elusive on the ground than a James White might be, but you're right. It is they're such different players.
Absolutely,
it's hard to really quantify them in the same wheelhouse.
Who
do you got for RB3 stepping it up?
I'm sort of going the same route that you're going. A guy that didn't play a full season, but I'm not saying that that's why he'll be as high as he will be next year. I'm just saying because he has so much potential. It's going to be Mark Ingram. Missed the first 4 games this season because of a suspension, PED, I believe. He was good this year, but 138 carries. He lost a lot of work. Just had to work his way back into the lineup. He did eat away from Alvin Kamara a little bit. What that pace that Kamara established in the first 4 games certainly didn't keep up. We sort of went over the extrapolated numbers last week, but Mark Ingram, the way that I see it, last year, 2017, him and Kamara finished number 2 and number 5 running backs. So there is that world where together they can exist in the top 10. But what the rustlings in the bushes right now around Mark Ingram is that he is going to sign somewhere else. And I just think in a world where he signs with maybe a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, Kareem Hunt's not going to be back, especially with the Chiefs because they let him go. If he does come back, he's going to have to serve a huge suspension. Kansas City only has Damian Williams right now. Spencer Ware hasn't looked the same since his knee injury.
No.
Hasn't looked as quick, hasn't looked as elusive. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to need to bring in somebody who is proven, who is a veteran. Mark Ingram's he's a little bit past his prime, but he's shown he can still get it done. And, he can handle a 250, 270 carry season, no problem. So I just think the difference in talent between a guy like Damian Williams and Kareem Hunt is massive. But Damian Williams is still giving you RB1 fantasy production. And it's the same thing we saw in Pittsburgh. Like, James Conner's not Le'Veon Bell, but he's putting up almost Le'Veon Bell numbers. James Conner was the 7th best running back in 2018, and that was with a couple weeks missed. He only played 12 games. So
that's right.
Sometimes, when we say the running back doesn't really matter, when you put a system out there like the Chiefs or like the Steelers, that a great running back is going to be produced from the system. So if Mark Ingram lands in Kansas City, that's why I'm saying a free agent splash like that could move him way, way up, right? And he won't be facing any PED charges, most likely. So that's why I'm going Mark Ingram.
All right. I like that justification. I'm just curious, is that going to hold up if he stays on New Orleans, you think?
No, I don't think it is. I mean, I don't think you're going to see him be as far down as he was. He finished 31 this year. But when you miss 4 games, like a quarter of your season, that has a huge impact on your numbers. But 138 carries, he'll get closer to 200 if he stays there. Last year, I think for reference, he was in the 230 range and finished number 5. So a lot of touchdowns, mind you, but I know he wants to be in New Orleans. I just think he's going to sign somewhere else, And if he does, then Alvin Kamara shoots up for me too.
Yeah,
big time.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
We shall see what the future holds, and I'm curious to see what Landon has to say on it too, because I'm sure he's going to bounce back maybe a couple of the same names that we have, plus probably 10 more guys, because it's obviously way too early. But that's the fun of this, right?
Yes, sir. No, it's going to change so much, but we're going to look back on this episode and say, man, it's so funny how time can just change things, or scenarios, different guys moving in and out of teams and into new systems. It can just change so much, right? Just how a guy looks from a training video on Instagram just sends the hype train in a totally different direction. So, time is funny that way. But before you sign off here, because I know you got to get going, any takeaways, big takeaways from the NFC, AFC championship games last week?
Big takeaway was more or less, I guess, quarterbacks just proving skeptics wrong. With Goff, and he was playing some real hard-nosed football, and that was an entertaining game. I don't need to get into the murky mess that was the end of that game.
Oh no, we have to. We have to.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to, but we have to.
We have to.
But yeah, on the other side in the AFC game, Tom Brady came back and was just firing off perfect passes, exactly like we've seen him do a million times. And maybe it's just me, and I think it is just me, but I think there's a space in that Hall of Fame for Tom Brady. Maybe it's just me.
You think there's enough room?
It was textbook Tom Brady football, and that's the team the Patriots are. And if you're watching that game, let me tell you, Tony Romo is the best analyst in football. That was remarkable.
There's a compilation on YouTube from that game where he literally calls like half a dozen plays. He's like, "Oh, watch this guy up here."
The game-winning drive. It's like he was in on the huddles.
Picks the whole thing apart, and it literally happens. He's like, "Oh, if this safety cheats here, he's going to throw it over the shoulder to Gronk," and then he calls the next play, and it's like, holy, this guy's a wizard.
Yeah, I thought that was really entertaining.
I hope him and Nance get the bid for the Super Bowl. But
well, it's fun. Like we grew up with guys like John Madden and Pat Summerall, who were, you thought the game wouldn't really change from that. I just grew so accustomed to those voices, and then, you got your Al Michaels, you got your Chris Collinsworth, but to me that was like the next level of commentating a game. I was very impressed with that.
He just knows his style. He's been doing it all year long. Like it's not anything new, but it's still so impressive.
I guess on that platform, it was just maybe more accessible, more obvious.
My biggest takeaways from either game is like NFL playoff football is unbelievably great, and this year we were treated. No two no two games in the Super Bowl era have gone to overtime in the conference championship weeks. So this was the first time in NFL history we saw both the AFC, NFC games go to overtime. So that was kind of cool.
That was deadly.
The Patriots, their brand of football is just untouchable. I honestly believe if Patrick Mahomes could have got comfortable, could have got things going in the first half, this was a potentially runaway win for the Chiefs, because you saw how explosive they were second half. But the first half, you're just kind of sitting there like, is it nerves? Is it inexperience? What is holding the Chiefs back? What's holding Mahomes back? Because they looked so deflated. But that didn't, that narrative didn't exist. But again, they let the Patriots get ahead, and you just can't do that, man. They're that good. The NFC game was troubling for me personally. I mean, I had a vested interest in the Saints going to the Super Bowl. It was really, really sad to see it go down the way that it did. You and I haven't talked about the play yet, so I'll flip it over to you really quick. What do you think about the play? How do you see this impacting the game?
I think there is probably going to be a new rule put in effect where a coach can challenge a flag or lack thereof. Mm-hmm. I think there's been way too many awful controversies this year regarding flags and rules and poor officiating. So there are so many heartbroken people and fans around the league. And now, frankly, to see like the league fining that player and essentially tucking their tail between their legs is it's just a bit pathetic. And you want to give a player like Drew Brees and that amazing team he led another chance at least like to replay that play 900 times would be, that would have been a completion.
Well, so
nothing much more to say.
Are you on the side of foul or good non-call?
Are you kidding me? I used to play defensive back. That was the dirtiest move I've ever seen.
I have to ask.
You couldn't recreate that with a hit stick in Madden 2005.
They recreated it in Madden, and it was a pass interference call. No,
Go figure.
It's just the guy breaks all three rules as a defensive player. One, he contacts the receiver before the ball is delivered, right? Catchable or not. And I will argue that, yes, it was 100% catchable. Two, doesn't locate the ball, doesn't turn to locate the ball. Three, doesn't make a play on the ball. So he breaks all three rules. Like, it's a perfect visual example of what pass interference is, in my opinion, from what I see with my own eyes. And I just think if that call is made, it totally changes the game, because New Orleans gets the ball on the 3-yard line with a new set of downs, 1:50 on the clock, and the Rams only have one timeout. Essentially, the Saints are milking the clock down to the teen-second area and kicking a field goal. And that's the game. Like, barring some miraculous, unfathomable play, like a Hail Mary from 70 yards, or, like what the Dolphins did to the Patriots in week, whatever it was, 16, 15, the lateral play.
Yeah.
Like, the Saints are going to win. And deservingly, they should have won that game. I mean, the Rams were behind the whole game. New Orleans managed the clock beautifully. They made the right plays, and they just got gypped by a terrible non-call. And I just think, like, if you're Bill Vinovich and you say, I didn't even see the play, like, dude, what were you looking at? There's 2 minutes left in a title game. Like, come on. It's just lazy. Yeah. And then I hate to, like, I don't know if you saw the part of the rule book where it says that the commissioner has the ability to either have the game replayed or replayed from the time of the foul. I don't know if you've seen that.
And then for absolutely like nothing stemming from that.
Yeah.
I did see that rule. Yeah.
I mean, Michael Thomas was the first one that sort of brought the rule to the attention of Commissioner Goodell. And he's really been completely silent about it. And just yesterday, I saw a tweet from the tight end on the Saints, Ben Watson. He tweeted at Commissioner Goodell saying, We all realize that football is an imperfect game, played and coached and officiated by imperfect people. What occurred last Sunday in New Orleans, though, was outside of that expected and accepted norm. Your continued silence on this matter is unbecoming of the position you hold, detrimental to the integrity of the game, and disrespectful and dismissive to the football fans everywhere. From the locker room to Park Avenue, accountability is what makes our league great. Lead by example, we are waiting. I thought that was beautifully put by him. I reshared it on our main account. It's tough, man. I think that was put perfectly by him. But just to sort of sit back and coward and shy away from the drama, you got to be better than that. You know, the league needs that voice to sort of clarify what happened. If you think your guys blew the call, man up and say so and do something about it. But hiding is just not the way to go about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's exactly it. It's almost just inexcusable, really, for the good of the New Orleans Saints Association and like all the fans. You know, everyone in the league was kind of waiting for a response and just to receive nothing aside from the gripes from players themselves is it's just not satisfying as a fan.
No. I think we always just want what's right, you know. And
now like next week, who knows? The Rams win that game, and then that player is going to be hoisting a trophy, and it's really there's just going to be kind of a bit of a blemish on the whole story, right?
It's when you put a little bit of an asterisk there.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Well, listen, pal, I appreciate you coming on. I know you got stuff to do tonight, got some big plans, but I'm glad we could fit this in. I'll wait for Landon's company, and we'll kind of carry on for the rest of the episode.
All right, deadly. Yeah, have fun. Have fun with him later, and I'll be listening and see if that was up to snuff in the second half.
Yes, you'll have to. I think it'll be a fun episode for you guys because you'll be listening to half that you've never heard before.
Okay. Well, take care of yourself, buddy.
All right, man. Be safe tonight.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, Lando. Welcome in, buddy. Hope you had a good shift.
Hey, man.
Hey.
Yeah, it was good.
Marky and I had a pretty good discussion here.
All right. But now you brought in a guy that actually knows what he's talking about.
That's right.
That's chime in.
That's where the credibility for this podcast just goes through the roof. You know, we had to bring in the big guns.
All right. Nice to be here.
Heavily debated. We made a couple cases for some players here. We're talking about running back 2s and running back 3s from 2018 that could have the potential in 2019 to find themselves as a running back 1. Do you have any guys in mind, running back 2, running back 3, who could make that jump?
A couple of guys that jump to the top of my mind, and a guy this past year that was drafted as an RB1, but he was injured for most of the season. The whole team was a letdown. I'm going to go Dalvin Cook. He finished as an RB3 this year. I think he absolutely has another chance to make it as an RB1 in a per game scenario. He's still pretty good, pretty close to the RB1, RB2 fringe spot, I think. So the fact that he finished as an RB3, I think, is a little misconceived if you just look at the whole season as a whole number. So Dalvin's my guy that finished as an RB3, and then Nick Chubb. I'm a big fan of Nick Chubb. He's going to be fairly highly drafted, but he didn't end up in our top 10 running backs. So he's going to be right around that turn, maybe mid-second round pick, I think, that he absolutely has the possibility, especially if the Cleveland Browns keep on improving, and I think they will. What do you think about my picks?
Yeah, Dalvin Cook is a nice pick. I'm just a little bit worried about his injury, I guess.
Health, yeah. He's not injury prone per se. He's just been injured.
Yeah, I mean, he only played, 12 games this season? Or 11, 12? Wasn't good, But yeah, I see Dalvin as, sorry, he only played 10 games. I see Dalvin as a big piece. You're right, per game basis, obviously explosive. He had some really, really good weeks, and then a couple weeks he just burned you. And I just feel like this week was frustrating. If you own Dalvin Cook, you drafted him to be one of your stud players. But I think there's no chance that Dalvin Cook has another repeat season like he had this year. Like health-wise, performance-wise, I think he'll be a lot more stable. And I know Latavius Murray is going out of town in this offseason. So the spotlight should be on Dalvin. So I like that play.
Yeah, for sure. If you start him in the correct matchups, he was really good against bad opponents. Against Miami, he put up 28 points. But besides that big game, he finished with a bunch of kind of points that fairly mediocre, that 10 to 15 point range in that area. Didn't have very many touchdowns, only had 2 on the whole season. So that has to go up.
No, I mean, when I look at Nick Chubb and a guy that's right beside him, literally a point apart, Derrick Henry, I see two different running backs. Derrick Henry was complete garbage for the whole fantasy regular season, and then in weeks 14, 15, 16 put up 50% of his points. And then Nick Chubb, his situation changed drastically when the Jaguars acquired Carlos Hyde and Nick Chubb got the keys to the backfield and he was an absolute workhorse. Like those are two different scenarios, and yet they finish year end the exact same place. So I view Nick Chubb a lot more valuable than Derrick Henry. And we can talk a little bit more about a guy like Derrick Henry, how his year end position is not very truthful of his season long performance, but it could be something to look forward in the future. But I would take at this point Nick Chubb ahead of Derrick Henry for next year.
I for sure will as well. I've got Nick Chubb at my 11th spot, but I still, based on what we saw at the end of last season and how much volume he got and how they won with giving him that volume, I think they're gonna have to keep doing that to win. And they saw how good he could be. If he gets 20 plus carries a game, I think Derrick Henry has to finish as an RB2, just based on volume. If he's healthy,
if you're gonna give the guy 275, 300 carries, then for sure you got to draft him first 2 rounds. I mean, there's not that many backs in the league that touch the ball that many times. No. So sure, out of opportunity alone, you would have to, but that wasn't the case for the whole season. I mean, Deion Lewis really ate into that workload. They paid him the money. They had to use him. But if the last 3 games are any sort of sign as what's to come for Derrick Henry, who knows? The other thing, too, is that with Derrick Henry, not that I want to make this the Derrick Henry talk, but you have to factor in, while we're talking about him, Matt LaFleur is now gone. Offensive coordinator is now the head coach for the Green Bay Packers. So whoever's coming in to fill that role in Tennessee really has no loyalty to Derrick Henry, doesn't owe Derrick Henry anything. They could have their own thoughts and their own plans. So it is a little bit muddy in the water when you add in different coordinators. They might value guys differently. You just never know. But it was certainly
I get the
crazy to see the performances out of him those last 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, I get the argument both ways. There's a part of me that sees that volume and sees what they did to succeed, and maybe they'll keep doing next year. And there's a part of me that says, you know what? I would prefer a running back that can catch the ball, use all 3 downs, just not have to rely so much on the volume where we're in a run or we're in a pass first league now. All these coordinators these young coordinators getting brought in to be like the McVays of the world and Andy Reid, and really get involved in the screenplays and getting your running backs catching the ball, where the guys, the big beastie Derrick Henrys of the world are kind of getting phased out a little bit. Not to say they always will, and we're in a cyclical, we're we're a cyclical society in general, and the NFL is a copycat league. We'll see. We'll see what happens. It'll be interesting to see what happens next year with Derrick Henry. It's almost like maybe just hands off again. I know you were last year, but but maybe he's going to be a value at where he gets drafted based on volume alone.
Which of the top 12 running backs, and I know one of them is Kareem Hunt, so he's not really an answer at number 9, but which guy from the top 12 has the best chance of falling out of the RB1 category? Who will slide in 2019?
So it's funny, last offseason I was talking, we've had several discussions about this guy where I thought he belonged up in that round 3 turn pick, and I think this year he'll be drafted pretty high, but I think he has a possibility of falling out. I think that's Joe Mixon for me. The Bengals offense does not give me a lot of confidence. I know this past year with Tyler Boyd and AJ Green and Mixon, they were all very fantasy relevant. I think it's possible to take a step backwards. I don't see them in a really great spot. They got a ton of injuries last year, and it could very well happen again. I do like Joe Mixon. I think he's a great talent. He can catch the ball. He's a hard runner. But out of the guys that I look at my top 10, I think he has a possibility of falling out.
That's interesting. I didn't expect you to go Mixon there.
Yeah, I do like him, and I've liked him since he came out of college. But yeah, it's a hard choice. I don't want to go like a guy like Gordon Le'Veon Bell is a possibly an easy answer because we don't know where he's going to finish. I mean, he didn't actually finish as a top. He's consensus top 10 probably for the industry this year because he always is because he's one of the most talented running backs in the league. But I guess another easy answer might be James White. Was that one that you guys picked?
Well, no, I didn't do this question with Mark, but this was a question. So this is actually my pick. So James White finished as the number 8 fantasy running back last year. Did it on the back of a lot of high reception games. I mean, he was heavily used in the passing game and in the running game, but it was really out of necessity because at times they were without Michelle and they were without Burkhead for a majority of their season. So they had to go James White. They really just didn't have much else. But now you're seeing as the Patriots start to make a push into the playoffs, you're seeing Sony Michel start to take over a majority of the running work. I mean, if you look at the game last week against Kansas City, 29 attempts for 113 yards, and he scored twice. Burkhead came in to get the game-winning touchdown in overtime. That's going to happen. We see that with New England, and we see that with Belichick. But James White wasn't as great as he had been all year in the AFC Championship. He was only he caught 4 passes for 49 yards and rushed 6 times for 23. So really irrelevant compared to what he gave you the whole year. And I think that's just because Sony Michel is back. And if I think that's going to carry forward, James White has no chance to be an RB1 again.
Yeah, I've got Sony Michel ranked pretty high, and I think everyone else will going into the season. But the Patriots are a hard backfield to distinguish, and it's I totally get where you're coming from though. He's got to end. I don't think he's going to be drafted as a top 10 running back, but he might be another value again depending on what happens in New England. Now
while we're here on this landscape, there's just one more name I want to sort of talk about, and it's a guy that finished at the 13th spot here in half-point leagues, Tariq Cohen.
Yeah.
Is this like the ascension of Tariq Cohen? Is he coming into the fantasy spotlight, or was this just an outlier season? Is Jordan Howard gonna come back to form and Tariq Cohen's gonna sort of take a step back, or what's the deal here? How did he finish so high?
He's a tough guy. Tariq Cohen lost people a lot of fantasy championships with that 2.4 performance in week 16. Only a few weeks before against the Giants, he finished with 30.64 points. But he only had 8 attempts that game. It's crazy. I think that the archetype of Tariq Cohen is where the league is going, and I think he's gonna. I don't think it's a one-off season. I think he's gonna be a top 24 running back again. He's right around that Sony Michel spot for me. Just because I don't know the dynamic with what's going on. Yeah, James White, why can't I think of the other running back in Chicago?
Rex Burkhead. Oh, Jordan Howard.
Jordan Howard. I had Jordan Howard all season, and you couldn't know when to start him. When you would bench him, he would actually stumble into the end zone, and it was.
No, you're totally right.
He screwed a lot of people over too. So, it's gonna be interesting to see the dynamic. What teams do with their running backs, whether they have a guy that's the big bruiser like the Derrick Henrys, and they have the other guys like the Tariq Cohens of the world and the Alvin Kamaras.
Mm-hmm. No, you're totally right with the archetype that is Tariq Cohen. I think what you saw from Cohen this year was in the right game script. He's, so dynamic, can do it all, and he can burn you, in so many different ways. But there's other game scripts where his play style just doesn't suit the game. It's not. He doesn't get the space that he might need to over the middle. He might not be able to catch 4 or 5 yard passes and take them 20 yards. The screen game might not be working. So I feel like although it can be very dangerous, it doesn't lend itself to every single opponent. And that's why you saw those highs and lows for Tariq Cohen this year. That's, it's going to be hard for him to have a season where he is an RB1 just because his role is so up and down.
Would you put him in your top 24?
Top 24, yes. I don't. I have Sony Michel a lot higher than where you might. I think Sony Michel is going to be in that low teen range.
Right.
Whereas I think Tariq Cohen might be low 20s if I were to stat it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to really sit down and stat out players and get some algorithms together and figure out where we actually project these players based on what happened this past year and the year before maybe. And it should be a lot of fun.
So we started off the episode today with a little bit of a fun question. Would you rather have complete control over either water or fire? And you didn't know this question beforehand, so we're throwing a little bit of a curveball at you. Mark and I both came to the same answer.
Would I prefer complete control over water or fire? If I had to pick one to have complete control over.
And there's no context.
So my first thought is that the world is covered in water. We have so much water. It'd be pretty awesome to have control over water. You could walk on water. You could ride waves to another continent potentially. You could provide clean water to poor countries that have dirty water potentially. So that would be beneficial. For fire, you could. I mean, that's how you cook everything, and is heat. Heat is substantial, and if you need it,
Yep, you're on the right track.
I think I gotta go with water with that one. I think there's more, just off the top of my head, more versatility with water. It could, if you get it cold, it becomes ice or snow. You could You could you could build a mountain and snowboard down it.
Sure.
You know, I think I got to go water. What direction did you guys go?
So it's water. Final answer.
Water's my final answer.
We also went water.
You did too. Okay. Well,
yeah.
What?
So yeah, so we went back and forth, but my take was, in a survival setting, I think I would go fire. Like if the question was posed as if you could have like unlimited fire or unlimited water for a survival situation, I would pick fire because yes, I could sustain hydration. Like I could live for 2 to 3 weeks on just water.
Sure.
But that doesn't guarantee that I'll live, because after 3 weeks without food, you will die. And without warmth, you will probably die. So it doesn't matter if you're hydrated. If you're stuck in a cold climate, you're toast.
Right.
Right. So I said I would pick fire because there's a better chance that I could survive finding some source of hydration versus staying warm and not being able to stay warm and not being able to eat. So I said in a survival situation, I'd have to take fire.
Yep.
But in this case, my mind, I don't know why, I went to complete like catastrophic potential. And I was like, man, like if I could just compile the biggest tsunami wave, like I could just crush anything I wanted.
That's the direction you went?
That's not the argument I made, but that's where my mind went.
And in the end, if you and I are battling, the water wins over the fire. The water puts out the fire.
Yeah. But I said to Mark, that's funny, because I was like, well, if you go back to our last episode when we were talking about Pokemon cards,
yep,
throwback, when you got those Pokemon cards, you wanted Charizard over everything else.
100%. He's the OG. He's the best.
That's exactly what the word for word I said. He's the OG. You need Charizard in your deck, the holographic.
Yep.
But Mark's like, no, man, it's Blastoise. Like Blastoise will wipe him out.
Well, he does. Technically, he does. But no one wanted Blastoise.
No. Mark made a good point. In the card version, Charizard dealt more damage. But in like the Pokemon games, it's Blastoise.
Yeah, you're right. If you had then the Game Boy games, you're right. Blastoise absolutely destroyed.
Oh yeah, yeah. Cheat code.
100%. No one wanted the Bulbasaurs and the Ivysaurs and the. Screw that.
Oh, Ivysaur is just the worst.
Yeah,
the worst.
What do they turn into? What's the final evolution?
Venusaur.
Venusaur. Right.
Yeah. In about 2 more sentences, this will be a Pokemon podcast.
Oh man! So did you enjoy the championships?
Yeah, we talked about them. You can listen to it. We had some interesting takes on the games. Cole's Notes version, Tom Brady is Tom Brady, and the Patriots are just really good at scheming.
Yep.
Pat Mahomes looked a little bit shaky in the first half, but they got it together.
Yep.
And then just the way that Saints-Rams game ended was, a disgrace and a little bit of, a letdown for all football fans.
Yep.
And just a little bit cowardly that the commissioner of the league sits there in his office chair and doesn't say anything about the matter.
Yep.
It's just coward's way out. So that's kind of what we talked about. You can listen to it at length, but
I absolutely will. I can't wait.
Pretty much it.
I'm looking forward to the Super Bowl. I can't wait to come to your spot and watch it. Are you?
You could be seeing a live podcast.
Oh, that would be deadly. Get Scooty involved too?
Yes.
Sounds good. Obviously, you're going for the Rams, I assume?
I have to, yes.
By necessity, I think everyone except for people in Boston are going for the Rams. Why not?
Yeah, the weekend of February 2nd and 3rd will be the Rams for a weekend. Rams fan for a weekend contest.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah. I'm going to have to.
Yeah.
All right, well, that was fun. A little bit of an interesting, different setup for the podcast.
Yeah, nice and quick.
In the end,
we're not on the phone for an extra hour tonight, so it's good.
If you're really tired of listening to me, then sorry you got stuck with me for the full hour. But if you really like Landon or really like Mark, you got shortchanged tonight. So.
Yeah, that's all right.
Oops. Well, enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you guys next Saturday when we preview the Super Bowl.
Sounds good. Have a good rest of your weekend, Mac.
All right, buddy. Yeah, we'll see you, man.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at SMS_fantasy. Support this independent podcast at patreon.com/SaturdayMorningSnap.